Welcome to this week's discussion on classical realism. So it's your turn by now to get into your critical discussion posts and your responses. I'm just sharing a few of my views to try and orient you. So classical realism often refers to what are the founding principles of that theory. And as I've said before, a theory is a lens through which you look at the world. It's not necessarily that it's right or wrong or that you can't prove it to be wrong. It's just a disciplined approach that a certain body of scholars have used to explain certain events or behaviours. So, of course, realism was very popular in describing the Cold War scenario because at its foundations, it thinks of nations as primarily interested in things like national self-interest, particularly their security. It's often used to describe why states have conflict between one another. It was often used to describe events such as the buildup of nuclear arms, this idea of, defense, I suppose. If I have enough nuclear arms, then chances are you won't be able to attack me because you'll be afraid of the fact that I can attack you. So obviously it's going in the opposite direction to a certain degree of cooperation. But it's not that nations don't cooperate under realist thought. They do. And in fact, nations sometimes bolster their own power base through cooperation, but usually around this idea, again, of security. So say, for example, you're a tiny country in the middle of nowhere. How do you secure yourself? Well, you form an alliance with a much larger nation. And this is how the US and Russian camps in the Cold War were really formed, with these massive alliances under these two big umbrellas. Now, the world has become a lot more complex today, and that's often considered one of the weaknesses of realism. It just simply doesn't explain all the conflict and events we see happening around the globe, or the fact that you don't have this bipolar world anymore, a much more complex world. However, realism is still alive and well in a lot of circles, and obviously it's very compelling in describing domestic politics and why nations, when they're on the international stage, will often think of their own country's interests first. So it might be okay, good and well, to cooperate with other nations, but if it threatens my national interest, then it's quite different. So that's usually how realism is used even today. But like I said, it has weaknesses. It cannot describe everything, but it certainly has strengths, as we do see national self-interest still quite predominant. If one country's security is threatened by another, then see what happens. Usually it becomes very inward-looking very quickly, or that country will look to its major security alliances. So I could keep going, but this week I really want to leave it to you. Now, what will be my engagement on discussion posts, given that your discussions are part of your assessment? I will try and guide and have a bit of a commentary here and there. I purposely do not want to get overly involved. I find when an ELA does that, people end up just talking to the ELA or for the ELA, or perhaps being overly conscious of what I might think. And also, I don't want to preempt what eventually will be my marking of your papers. But, sometimes I might like or give credence to a certain post, just as an example, to say, hey, this is really good, or this discussion's really strong, or don't forget, include scholarly references. So I'll just be consistently giving that type of guidance. And of course, you are welcome to ask me any questions, and also to jump on the Assignment 1 Q&A thread. And do keep connecting in terms of the collaborate sessions as well, and listen to the recording if you haven't already for the first. Thank you.